Mau whaala po tuputonga, ia mai se fo ia nisi o sui, ta iulu le tanga luenga tatou malo, a pe fo ia sui mai ofisa po la ese o malo o fatasi, ia mai se tatou paanga o le media, ia whatalo whātu o tuli Amasara, whalatua se sua, Toyo se anga o na matalia leo le tatou Paul Kalame e whaatino umamai I ofisa tūtonu I Fiji ia e tatou Paul Kalame ai lo whape na o na join in mai ia vaenga se pe o na iai whamoe lia so lo iai tatou Samoa o Vanuatu.
Thank you, Ayesha and Susan for being there, and thank you, Katie, for being also there.
Avelo leo whatawaa, whaina sui o le ofisa Unfpa Samoa nei, ia e mole atule whakataitele o na o le talia leo le whatalam latu. Ia e a whio mai na tala mai a aoi tātou mo mawina foi. Ia le launchinga o le reporting. Be on the two fantasia, so Sonic Unfpa, ia ngale Women Enable International. Ia ma le atato tō whapofonga foi I fola sanga, o le asa nia I ngai mata awha le so ia whaholo, ia o la ua ia sa whai masu ia Samoa, ia I le tū fantasia o le nei suenga, ia ma nei reporti. Ia, la tu atu I Fiji, ready mai lola to ia ona whapele o tatou amata. Ia whaftaitele lava ia whio mai. Mai a tatou Paul Kalame, ia o tapena ina le tatou lunch. Ia pea mai a le tatou Paul Kalame nei aso. Whakala lava a le seme fia Naumia, ia o lo iai ia le sungai ano Elani, ma Bishua, a pe foi James, ia ma Emil, o lo ia vaenga li Unfpa, ia o se Susannah pea Naumia. And also a warm welcome to Dr. Dixon, the head of and representative for WHO in Samoa, Cook Island, Niue and Tokelau. Welcome and thank you for accepting the invitation, as well as Tomasi, the head of ILO here in Samoa. Thank you very much for joining us. So we'll be handing over to Suva, PSRO, to start our program once they are ready. But thank you very much for joining us today to witness the launching of our People with Disabilities Assessment Report.
Everyone, welcome. It's a real pleasure to be here with all of you today. We have colleagues here in the room with us in Fiji. We also have colleagues attending online virtually from all over the world, actually. And we also have colleagues all around the Pacific meeting in virtual locations today across many Pacific countries. So Fiji, Kiribati, Vanuatu, Tonga, Solomon Islands, Samoa, FSM, and RMI. So a real warm Pacific welcome to all of our colleagues that are joining us here today. My name is Kathy Taylor. I'm the International Program Coordinator working at the UNFPA Pacific Office, and I will be one of the MCs and the moderators today. We're really pleased to have everyone here with us today for the launch of the Women and Young People with Disabilities Needs Assessments that have been carried out in Fiji, Samoa, and Vanuatu. This has been a long coming event. We started this work about 3 years ago, and due to the COVID epidemic, it took a long time for these reports to come to fruition. So we're extremely excited to be able to share this with you today. This is part of a much larger program called the Transformative Agenda Program that is generously funded by the government of Australia and works across 6 countries here in the Pacific. So we're really excited to be able to share with you today the results of these needs assessment reports and to also speak to you about some of the other work that we're doing to mainstream disability inclusion here in the Pacific. So without further ado, I just want to give a warm welcome to everyone, and I'd also like to then pass over the mic to my colleague, Susannah Phillips, who is the Deputy Director of Women Enabled International, one of our key partners. Susannah, over to you.
Thanks so much, Kathy, and welcome everyone. I'm so excited to be here with all of you today as we release these needs assessment reports on access to essential sexual and reproductive health and gender-based violence services for women and young people with disabilities in Fiji, Samoa, and Vanuatu. These reports, which as Kathy mentioned have been a long time coming, really center the voices and experiences of women and young people with disabilities in the region, which we know are all too often hidden from view and silenced. It marks a significant contribution to the knowledge base around key issues impacting women and young people with disabilities across the Pacific. Moreover, as we'll hear today, and as Kathy alluded, the findings and recommendations from each of these reports are informing our ongoing work in partnership with Unfpa and other implementing partners across the region to really ensure that disability inclusion is at the heart of ongoing efforts to strengthen access to these essential services in the region. So I want to thank you all for joining us for today's discussion. I'm really excited to delve into the findings of these reports in more depth, and just great to join you all from Austin, Texas. And I apologize for any background noise. There's a very big storm here today, so hopefully my electricity will hold out so I can join for the full time. Back over to you, Kathy.
Great, thank you so much, Susannah. And without further ado, I'd really like to take the time to introduce our next two speakers. So we'll be hearing opening remarks from Sally Makai, the Assistant Director of the Global Health Policy Branch at Dfat, and Iori Kato, the new Director of UNFPA Pacific Sub-Regional Office. So before I introduce them, I'd just like to share a little bit of information about them. So Sally Makai is the Assistant Director of the Global Health Division of the Australian Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. She has been working on sexual and reproductive health and rights for the last 7 years. Her work includes developing and leading Dfat's international negotiating position to advance sexual and reproductive health and rights in multilateral forums, managing Dfat's global relationships with UNFPA, the International Planned Parenthood Federation, Marie Stopes International Reproductive Choices, and managing the $30 million transformative agenda for women, youth, and adolescents in the Pacific. She also manages Dfat's investment in the UNFPA Supplies Program, which provides the majority of contraceptive commodities to the Pacific. She has previously held diverse roles in the Australian Aid Program, including postings in Sri Lanka and South Africa, as well as Papua New Guinea. Sally has a master's degree in public policy from the Australian National University. So Sally, a very warm welcome to you, and we'd like to invite you to share your opening remarks.
Can you hear me, Kathy?
Yes. Can we turn up the volume, please? And Sally, maybe you can max out your volume, please?
Yes.
Now we can hear you.
Okay, great. And is the video on, or we'll leave that one off? Just checking. Mine says it's off.
Can you turn it on?
No, I can't. The host has stopped it. That's okay. I'm happy.
You should be able to do that now. My apologies.
Okay. That's okay. There we go. That seems to be working. Hopefully you can see me now.
Yes, we can see you. Wonderful.
Wonderful. Having IT success this morning. Bulat, talafu, hello and good morning everyone. I'm going to begin today by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land from which I am speaking, which is the Ngunnawal people, and pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. It's a real pleasure to be here today on behalf of the Australian Government to join partners UNFPA, the Pacific Disability Forum, Women Enabled International to launch these really important reports. I'm so pleased to see there are so many people participating in this virtual event, or it's a face-to-face event for some, which is wonderful to see us being able to come together. There is a huge richness and depth to the reports, which are informed directly by the experiences of women and girls, men and boys with disability in Fiji, Samoa and Vanuatu. As many of you would be aware, Australia has a long-standing commitment to advancing the rights of women and girls and to disability inclusion as a key priority across all of our investments. In the Pacific, Australia has long-term investments to support Pacific Island countries to meet their commitments to gender equality. And this includes a new flagship program that's standing up right now called Pacific Women Lead, which has a focus on women's leadership and women's rights, including safety, health and economic empowerment. A key part of Australia's focus on gender equality in the Pacific is sexual and reproductive health and rights. They're essential for health, social, economic well-being of women and girls across their life cycle. So for us, this includes ensuring people everywhere have access to quality information they need to make informed decisions about their bodies, access to respectful, dignified, inclusive services that people need to live the life they choose, and that their right to the highest attainable level of health is fully realised. And that's why the Australian government is investing in a number of complementary activities in the Pacific to improve services and information to women and girls, including through UNFPA supplies, International Planned Parenthood, and actually a wide range of other organisations who have worked so well together in recent years to advance some of these really important issues. Disability inclusion is a key priority throughout all of these activities because we know, and as Susannah pointed out, all too well, that often women and girls with disabilities are left out of services due to stigma, discrimination in services, lack of information, lack of the education they need, inaccessible infrastructure, and a range of other barriers. We are so pleased to see some of the work being done by our partners. And just as an example of that, which we've been so pleased to see move forward, is some of UNFPA's work in assisting Pacific governments to implement training for health workers that include those vital skills to be able to meet the needs of people with disabilities out in all of those service delivery points across the 6 countries where this program works. We know that UNFPA is also providing technical advice to strengthen government policy on reproductive, maternal, neonatal, child and adolescent health that specifically articulates the importance of ensuring access to services for people with disabilities. And also working with governments to review national midwifery curricula, integrating disability services within that curriculum, which is vital when we think that midwives provide something like 95% of family planning services. So these are key points in the system that we're managing a great partnership with UNFPA that is tackling some of the most important points. I really wanted to acknowledge the women and girls with disabilities who shared their experience and stories during the needs assessment. It's really not an easy thing to do, but particularly talking about something as personal and intimate as sexual and reproductive health needs and personal requirements. It's very important to the Australian government that we hear directly from people with disabilities themselves and from their representative organisations. And in fact, that consultation process with people with disabilities and their representative organisations is a key criteria in how we assess the effectiveness of some of our partners. We know that too often the stories of women and girls with disabilities are not heard, ignored, not acted on, and we really are committed to changing that. We need to look at the underlying attitudes that are often a cause